The extremist's own press release said, and I quote, "the Hizb ut-Tahrir legal team led by Keir Starmer." Now, I know he doesn't like talking about them because they've been a client, but when I see a group chanting jihad on our streets, I ban them. He invoices them.
Wow. This is quite punchy, Tim.
Yes.
His former Home Secretary says the plan won't work. His current Home Secretary calls it batshit. His former Immigration Minister doesn't back his plan.
We'd like to just apologise for the language on Times Radio there.
Doesn't believe in it.
Unbelievable.
And last week, another of his MPs said the Tories should admit that things have got worse since they came to office, that after 14 years they've left Britain less united, the country is a sadder place.
Yes, I mean, he's... The thing is this isn't what Starmer isn't good at the humour, is he?
He hasn't got a clue where they are, has he? I can tell.
Bit of crowd
I can
work.
tell you one place they aren't, and that's Rwanda. Because the only people who sent to Rwanda is cabinet ministers. And for all the word, the ridiculous thing is, we know the Prime Minister himself doesn't even believe in this Rwanda gimmick. He had to be talked out of scrapping the whole thing. He didn't want to fund it. He didn't think it would work. When he sees his party tearing itself apart, hundreds of bald men scrapping over a single broken comb, doesn't he wish he'd had the courage to stick to his guns?
Taking that one personally.
Well, Mr. Speaker, now, I have absolute conviction that the plan we've put in place will work. Absolute conviction, because I believe it's important that we grip this problem. Now, he spends a lot of his time in this House talking about his time as a lawyer, Mr. Speaker, and I would urge him to listen to them, because Lord Wolfson has said that our bill severely limits the... Four eminent KCs have said that it is undoubtedly the most robust piece of immigration legislation this Parliament has seen, and Mr. Speaker, a former Supreme Court...
the Horizon system robust?
What the Prime Minister's got to say.
It is Lindsay Hall.
Because it matters to my
Lindsay Hall's
constituents.
up and
Those
down,
who
Rob.
feels it doesn't matter to those. Please leave, Prime Minister.
So he's telling off
Mr.
Labour
Speaker.
MPs there.
Four eminent KCs said this is undoubtedly the most robust legislation passed, and a former Supreme Court Justice has been clear that the bill would work. But I know, Mr. Speaker, he's always been more interested in what lefty lawyers have to say, Mr. Speaker. I've even got here the textbook that he authored for them. And it's called, and I quote, European Human Rights Law by Keir Starmer. So...
Well, he's got it printed out, he's waving it around.
So
He's still going. No, Lindsay Hall's intervened again.
When I stand up, please sit down. Can I just say, we don't use props in this House.
Oh,
and
no
I will
props.
certainly ensure that if you do need reminding, I certainly will. Keir Starmer.
Oh, no problems.
It's such utterly pathetic nonsense.
Oh, OK, well, stop won't blimey,
utterly pathetic nonsense. He couldn't be happier saying that.
New year, new nonsense.
Yeah, new year, nonsense.
Wasn't it?
When do you stand on the use of props, Al?
Oh, I'm all for it. I mean, I think, I resort to Excel if I need it. You know, we have a projector.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, my bar is always well stocked with victuals, so if someone needs some crisps...
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think Parliament's limiting itself here. If you could, I mean,
You could get a lot in the dispatch box, couldn't you?
You could imagine if he had in there, you know, compromising photographs, everything. I mean, fantastic, wouldn't it?
Well, they could go sort of full whose line is it anyway?
Yeah.
And at the start, Lindsay Hoyle gives them, I don't know, like a big
That's
phone
great.
In
snake.
question one, you must use...
Phone snake, and you have to just keep passing it backwards and forwards.
Yeah. I think I've got a lot of time for that, actually.
We're reaching the stage where they're becoming a sort of estuarial English face-off now.
I mean,
Starmer was like,
Yeah.
he doesn't even, he
He
hasn't
don't
got a
like it.
clue.
They ain't got a clue where they are.
He ain't
has
got
he?
a clue. And Sunak does it too when he's trying to be sort of vaguely
I mean,
populist.
he's actually going to get out of foam square with one written on it at some point, isn't it? That's where we're headed with this props thing. Here it is.
Here it is. We are back to square one. We'll get told off for that. Now, on this, as you're here as a professional comedian, Al, let's revisit Keir Starmer's joke. When he sees his party tearing itself apart, hundreds of bold men scrapping over a single broken comb, Doesn't he wish he'd had the courage to stick to his guns?
I mean, it's got words in it.
It's got a lot of metaphors.
Yes, and it sort of...
It needed a Comey payoff,
It
didn't it?
pitches up. Yeah, exactly.
Teeth.
Exactly.
Doesn't work in its own terms.
Or something to do with giving into his fringe. You know.
Good.
I mean, we're just... Once you mention that it's Chekhov's comb, isn't it? Once you mention the comb, there's got to be some. There's got to be some more hair involved, isn't there? I mean, it's
Chekhov's gun would be more interesting at this point in the proceedings.
Yes, I mean he's. The thing is this isn't what Starmer isn't good at the humour, is he? I mean, Starmer's really like. I know there's no. The polling all says there's no appetite for him, is there? That people aren't really into him, but. He's a rail replacement service. I don't want to get on that bus. but I have to get from A to B. So I will get on the bus.
There is no train.
There is no train. Exactly. There is no train.
To spend 6 hours with your face just rattling up against the glass.
That's the next Labour government.
How long have we been on here? Oh, God, we're only at Salisbury.
Bus that's either way too hot or far too cold.
Yeah.
That's the next Labour government.
Something to look forward to. What are we up to now? Is the next one number 5? Yeah, 2 more to go. Well, let's see if it gets any better. Let's see if there's any more prop work for Rishi Sunak to get. Lindsay Horse just seems very cross with everyone today. Let's go back to the House of Commons. This is question number 5 from Keir Starmer.
It's such utterly pathetic nonsense. He's been brutally exposed by his own MPs yet again. He's got one party chair who says she hopes the Lords will rip his Rwanda deal to pieces. He's got 2 more who had to quit because they don't think it'll work. All of them appointed by him, all now in open revolt against his policy, each other, and reality. Is there any wonder they all think this gimmick is doomed to failure when the Prime Minister himself doesn't believe in it?
Mr. Speaker, it is rich to hear from the honourable gentleman about belief in something, because it will be news to him. It is actually the case that you can believe in something and stick to that position on this side of the House.
I will say to this side.
Now he's telling off the Tory MPs.
Somebody's jumping in from over. Can I just say it's very important. It's an important day. People want to know what's going on. So I want my constituents, just like yours, to hear what the Prime Minister's got to say. Prime Minister.
Just this week, Mr. Speaker, we had another example of the honourable gentleman doing one thing, saying another, because this week he backed the Home Secretary in banning the terrorist group Hizb ut-Tahrir, despite him personally using the European Court of Human Rights to try and stop them being banned. And don't take my word for it, Mr. Speaker, the extremist's own press release said, and I quote, the Hizb ut-Tahrir legal team led by Keir Starmer. Now, I know he doesn't like talking about them because they've been a client, but when I see a group chanting jihad on our streets, I ban them, he invoices them.
Wow. This is quite punchy, Tim.
Yes, and the people behind him liked it, which is part of the reason that this whole theatrical enterprise takes place each week. Yeah, I mean, Tory Central Office, lots of briefing against Starmer's sort of legal backstory, and he's deploying it quite well. I mean, it's a decent line at the end, invoice line.
Is not knowing the details of this case, this is another example of the cab rank rule.
Some of them are cab rank and some of them aren't, and I don't know specifically on this one. Some of them are ones that he just pursued because he sort of believed in doing certain things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's a series of man traps here that they're trying to create for Starmer, isn't there, around his career. But I just don't know. I don't know. It's too late for that now.
Yeah,
is how it feels. And also, we're 5 questions in, and he's finally resorted to this.
Yeah,
which I think is quite interesting. Is that why would you not? Why would you not start with this if you're Sunak?
But I think that's a comedian's approach. Start with your strong material.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
But in PMQs,
and
you're building.
You start with the headline and the intro.
But in PMQs, they tend to there's a sort of crescendo
build
effect.
towards
We're
the end.
building
Okay.
towards
And
that.
I wonder what
Starmer's petering out a little bit. I mean,
Yes,
there
he
wasn't
is, yeah.
even really a question there.
No.
This is a bit like Operation Market Garden, isn't it? I mean, he did all right at Eindhoven, but he's now been stopped.
no,
by
look,
Jim Gavin.
Look at you
honestly,
showing off just because Al Murray's here.
Jeepers. I mean, if we really... I mean, you know as well as I do that the fundamental problem there was that the aircraft weren't available for a full first lift effort.
Just fade them out.
And
Just
the
let them
First
carry
Allied
on.
Airborne Army were organisationally new, so
Blame
didn't really
Jim
have
Gavin,
anyway,
that's what I do.
blame Jim Gavin, yeah.
You can find more of that on what's it called?
We have ways of making you talk.
We have ways
There we
of making
go.
you
Me
talk.
and James Holland.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
It's a podcast. Very good. Right, let's go back to the House of Commons then. This is intervention number 6 from Lindsay Hoyle.
Because there's 8 questions that I think some of you may want. Well, I'll tell you what, there's some's already gone off the list who wanted them. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, if he stuck to his position, he'd be voting with us. He'd be voting with us. His former Home Secretary says the plan won't work. His current Home Secretary calls it batshit. His former Immigration Minister
Whoa.
doesn't back
We'd
his
like
plan.
to just apologise
Even
for the language on
Prime Minister
Times
himself
Radio there.
doesn't believe in it.
Unbelievable.
And last week, another of his MPs said the Tories should admit that things have got worse since they came to office, that after 14 years they've left Britain less united, the country is a sadder place. If the Prime Minister can't even persuade his own MPs that it's worth supporting him, if he himself doesn't even believe in his own policies, why on earth should anyone else think differently?
Mr. Speaker, another week when it's crystal clear the honourable gentleman doesn't believe in anything and he doesn't have a plan. Now, while he talks the country down, let me update him on what's actually been happening in the past week. Inflation more than halved from 11% to 4%.
But up today.
Real wages rising. Real wages rising for the fifth month in a row. Last week, rates started falling and millions of people benefited from a tax cut worth £450. So while he takes us back to square one with a £28 billion tax grab, let's stick with a plan that's delivering a brighter future for Britain.
No long-term decisions. I
No
noticed
long-term
in that
decisions.
one.
No, we're now talking about brighter future.
Brighter futures without long-term decisions. I
A
didn't realise
brighter
that was
future
possible.
rather than the gloomy business we're currently avoiding. Yeah, but we also must apologise about the potty-mouthed leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer.
Unbelievable.
It's great, though, isn't it? You can't wave a piece of paper around, but you can.
I mean, how long's that been?
I think
when
actually
did that become parliamentary language?
I think we established that batshit was okay, wasn't it? It's.
Oh, you said it again. I'm
Ofcom
really
rules.
sorry, Mum.
I know.
I
you're
mean,
delicate.
this is why you don't normally listen to this show, Mum. I understand.
Yeah, apparently it's fine. It's on the Ofcom rules. It's fine.
But when did that start being a word you could say in Parliament?
It's a good question. I think it's when the Home Secretary was being accused of.
Very betide you if you call someone a liar, however.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Or have a printout of a document.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do we think overall after all that? Are we any the wiser? So, I suppose there were several questions. Like, what's the purpose of PMQs? Is it to land a new news story? Has Keir Starmer generated a new news story? No. Has he inserted himself into the news story?
Nah.
Not
Really?
He's trying to stir the pot with the other side, and
But there were no real punchy sort of questions that would have divided Sunak from his, from the people rebelling.
And actually, if he'd done that thing, we've talked about this before, because he had all the quotes there that Lee Anderson and Kevin
didn't
Bain and
use
other
them.
things said. If you just read out what they'd said
Yeah.
and said, what do you say to him?
yeah.
Really sort of, tried to exacerbate that friction.
But the Labour seem to be in a don't interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake mode, aren't they? That's what they've been. They've sort of hibernated, having to take any action, haven't they? For the last few months, it's been pretty much set on that direction of travel, isn't it? And while if the Tory party's going to tear itself apart, why change the story?
Yeah.
I mean, I thought what's interesting, obviously, as you said, Tim, is that quite clearly there's an attack line emerging. Just calling him a lefty lawyer isn't enough, but being able to hang it on who he's worked for, which is obviously partly why they banned them this week, clearly, is to why ban them now?
It's like George Osborne used to spend £1 million in a budget just for a joke, and they've now banned his butteria to give them a line at PMQs.
Well, don't you think? I mean, why? What's different?
The single problem with that is that I don't think many people in the UK know what his butteria is, and know whether or not we should be banning it, or whether or not he should have.
No, they were much bigger news back around time of 9/11 and all that. They never seldom out of the news, and they didn't get banned then. But
Tom's been in touch on the YouTube channel. Says Rishi Sunak missed the obvious alliteration in his last retort. It should have been "I ban them, he bills them." A pro like Al wouldn't have let that pass.
I think that's a very, very good point, and that is basically when they do this all again tomorrow. That's
they'll be better on the second night.
The second night. I mean.